Good evening and welcome to the 2025 version of Montpelier Civic Forum, where we are going to discuss the issues before vote on town meeting day. And tonight we've got a really good one. We have Superintendent Libby Bonesteel of the Montpelier Roxbury School District, who is going to discuss the school budget. Libby, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Or I should say welcome back, because you've been here before.
I have, yes.
And we are going to take a wide-ranging look at the school budget, and we're going to try and not use too many numbers, and we're going to try and make this comprehensible for you. And we're going to take you back to after the second school vote. After you had broken the 60% threshold again with a vote. And what happened at that point to the district? You had the challenge of integrating a group of elementary school students, and let's get to that one.
Yeah, so the school board voted last year to bus the students from Roxbury Village School, who are kindergarten through grade 4, to Union Elementary School. We had experience with this before when Roxbury and Montpelier merged. Middle school students and high school students came from Roxbury into Montpelier. And I will tell you honestly that I think the administration at that time, including myself, I was a new superintendent then, that first year, we thought kids are kids. They're going to be fine. And not a whole lot of extra activities happened to encourage friendships and that kind of thing. So we learned from that lesson. We knew that we had to be intentional about being inclusive of students who are coming over from Roxbury. So inside the school building, as soon as those kids pulled up on a bus, Anne was in that bus welcoming them with a bright smile on her face and bringing the kids out to the recess together where all the kids are in the morning. We had intentional lunch groups with kids so that friendships could be created. We did placement decisions really carefully, so the intent was to not have any students from Roxbury who are isolated by themselves in the classroom. And with the Roxbury Transition Committee, with the school board members and members from the Roxbury community and myself, I
believe there were also members from the Montpelier community on that.
Yep. And some teachers and administrators. We decided to hold an enrichment programming still at Roxbury Village School. So that happens 3 days a week so that the children from Roxbury still feel that community piece, because it was very important for the community to have that. You know, they're small. They know each other all, and they wanted to make sure that the kids were still growing up together and not spread out and isolated. So we started that 3 days a week, and it's incredibly successful. Lots of really cool enrichment activities happen out in that program. And so with all of these pieces combined, we were able to create a very inclusive environment where everybody belongs over at Union Elementary School. And from the kid perspective inside the schoolhouse, I think the transition has been pretty successful.
Do you see that after year one? Do you see that phasing out to where they're totally at Union?
Oh, they are totally at Union, yeah.
Now, the after-school program was something that was important.
Mm-hmm.
Could you discuss the after-school program?
Well, it's enrichment opportunities. So we have enrichment opportunities across our district, including at Main Street Middle School and at Montpelier High School and at Union a little bit as well. So there are enrichment opportunities. They've done rock climbing with Norwich University. There's cross-country skiing right now, or soon to happen right now. They have CrossFit going on. There's cooking classes. So there are all kinds of enrichment classes. A lot of parent volunteers from students from Roxbury's parent group, which is amazing. There's so much talent out there. So we've really been able to crystallize. It's run by a woman who's run that program for years now and knows the kids and the families very well. They all love her. And so it's been very successful for Roxbury's community.
Now, some parents chose to homeschool. Mm-hmm. Since this has been successful and their neighbors are enjoying this experience, do you anticipate greater enrollment from Roxbury next year?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how many students exactly chose to homeschool. There were a couple, but not a lot. Not as many as we actually anticipated. And you know, I always say that parents are going to make the best decision for their child. That's a parent's job to do. And so if they feel that homeschooling is the best opportunity for their child, then I encourage them to do that. And if they come back to us, then we will ensure that their kid feels like they belong and have a fantastic education as well. But that's a parent's decision.
On that committee, what do you anticipate happening to that building? And can you explain the process that the community has been going through to come up to the decision whether they want to spend $1 and purchase that building?
So it's in the hands of the Roxbury Select Board, and the community has done a beautiful job coming together to talk about what could happen with that building. There's been several kind of ad hoc committees of community members, as well as, and they feed into the Select Board to give the Select Board ideas. Rene Bouchard is the Select Board chair with the Roxbury Board, and he and I have close communication, as well as him and Jim Murphy on our school board. And so they're going to put up a non-binding resolution for town meeting day. It's a floor vote, I believe, and because they're still in the town hall means of voting. So it's a floor vote to see, non-binding, to see if they will take over control of the building. All indications from what I can see point to that they will. They had to work through a lot of ideas and suggestions, as well as adding money onto their budget to ensure that the maintenance and the building stays as pristine condition that it is in now.
If I could put you on the spot, what are some of the ideas that are being bounced around?
Well, I think they're great ideas. Some of them are to move all their town offices. So currently the town offices in Roxbury are in several different buildings. So they could move their town offices into one building. I've heard ideas of a community center or senior center kind of a place where there's a coffee shop. You know, there's no coffee shop in Roxbury, so creating a community space where people can come and just be community members together. I've heard that maybe from a private school renting out some of the rooms, or private preschools renting out the rooms that are eligible for preschool. So there's lots of different, moving the town library there. Into the bigger space.
Now, here's a question only you would be able to answer, you and your team. I believe that building is in excellent condition.
It is, yeah. It is. Yeah, so they have great ideas that I think will be really beneficial to Roxbury. The challenge is all of those things take organization and money and communication, and that's a challenge for a small town. So I hope they can do it. I hope they do it, because I think it's what's best for Roxbury, and I think they could probably make something pretty great there.
And would put a closure on that entire episode.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there are bridges that were burned, most definitely. I know that there are very dedicated community members who truly just want that building to be a thriving community hub, and just envisioning how that works is difficult. And so I think that we'll always continually work on building bridges, and there's a distance between us, and so busing is always a problem and will be a problem probably in the future as well. But we're working through those.
For voters who do not know the structure of the Montpelier Roxbury board, what is allocated to Roxbury?
So we have a 9-member board. 7 are from Montpelier and 2 are from Roxbury. And Montpelier votes are weighted twice, and Roxbury's is once.
Okay. So they do have permanent say in our school board over school governance?
Yeah, 100%.
Let's go on to this year's budget. Now we're into the numbers, so I'm warning you in advance. The budget increase in 2022 was 3%. The budget increase in 2023 was 4.5%. 6%, 6.9%, and the projected budget 5.2% as it heads back to the norm where it was 3 years ago. What happened?
Healthcare. Healthcare.
Something we have no control over.
Salary increases. 80% of our budget is salaries and benefits of staff, faculty, all of our employees. And healthcare rates have increased massively since the first year you quoted there. Just this year alone was a 12% increase, and we were literally celebrating that it was that low, which is just bizarre. So every year, healthcare costs really hit our budget hard.
Now, we are part of a pool, I take it.
It's a statewide
The city is part of a pool. Yeah.
Well, we're not part of the city. We're part of the statewide.
Right, but the city is as well. In the state pool, what is being done to try and kill that curve?
I'm not positive what's being done. If you listen to the governor's budget address and any plans he has, he did not speak to the healthcare costs. So I know that it's on the legislature's mind because this is a legislative action, and I know the legislature is thinking about this. However, you can't talk about cutting costs in education without also including healthcare in that conversation.
Is this a budget that includes any new programs?
No, not at all. Not at all. So the board asked the administration to come to the table with what we're calling a level programmed budget, which means there's not a whole lot of change. It's running the programs that we already have and not a considerable amount of change to those programs.
Now, in your presentation before the board, which I cribbed for this purpose, the statewide average is $12,881 to educate a full-time equivalent student. And Montpelier, it's $13,754, but in Washington Central, it's $14,380, and in Stowe, $14,264. And tell me that wasn't too fast for you. We are below neighboring districts. Why? What are they doing that we're not, that's causing that number? Or what's happening in those districts to cause them to be above us?
I think you'd have to ask those superintendents more than me. Stephen
They don't
and Ryan,
appear on my show.
Stephen and Ryan, I'm sure will be happy to come on your show. I'll let them know. I know Washington Central a little bit better than I know the Stowe district. So, and I know that Washington Central has multiple schools with limited number of kids in it. And when you have that, you tend to have higher costs. And that's a choice, right? That's a choice that community has made.
An agonizing choice.
Yeah. I watched it from the sidelines and listened to Stephen behind the scenes. And so it is a very agonizing choice. So when you have more schools, you have more staff. And in
fact, you lived through that agonizing choice.
Yeah, true. So it's those numbers, my guess, if I were a button girl, would be about staffing.
Our projection, you always have to project into the future, and you're projecting it stable K through 8 for a decade.
Enrollment, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that take into account people like my wife and myself who are kind of aging, and our house will turn into a house for a younger family as it once was?
We hope it does, Richard. We hope
we leave.
We hope we retire into the blue skies there. But yeah, it does not account for that, actually. It doesn't account for any new housing Montpelier might bring or Roxbury might bring to their towns. Based on what we know now in reality, we had NESDEC, which is a firm that does enrollment projections, look at birth rates and all kinds and where we are now, and they're projecting a relatively stable enrollment for the next 10 years for us. If we get more housing, that will probably change. That will probably for the better, actually.
I was going to say, it's not going to change for the worse.
Yeah.
So basically, you're projecting a slight decrease in Main Street Middle School and in the high school. 28 students, which really over a decade is static.
Yes.
And those schools have the capacity for more kids.
Main Street Middle School doesn't. Main Street Middle School is at capacity.
Should we pick up a side, now this is, of course, we're in dreaming land, should the Elks Club property be fully populated and perhaps Sabin's pasture as well? Do we have the capacity at Union to accommodate those kids?
Yes.
Do we have the capacity at the high school?
Yes.
And at Main Street Middle School, we can make the capacity.
We are pretty much at capacity at Main Street Middle School, but a few kids, we can definitely make it work. Yes.
But ultimately, this is like a snake eating a rabbit or something. If we're picking up more kids in the elementary school, they're going to end up in that middle schools. So that middle school will somehow be able to absorb the capacity of more kids at Union.
Yeah, we'd make it work.
Okay. Getting back to the class size policy, do you see that changing on the state level? We have a class size policy here, and that's been under discussion in their white paper of possibly increasing the class size.
Yeah, so the state's looking at the governor's plan through 3 lenses: funding, delivery models, and governance models. And that would be part of the delivery model. And they're looking at class size minimums right now. The legislature is looking into that to see what would be class size minimums.
Are they looking at class size maximums? We have class size maximums.
We do in our policy. Right now they're not. They're going at it from a minimum perspective.
Do you see our board addressing class size maximums in order to free up the existing slots that we have for other allocative purposes.
So what do you mean by that? I'm sorry.
There's a class size maximum in elementary school. If we raise that maximum, then we'd be able perhaps to allocate resources elsewhere.
Perhaps. I don't know if that actually works it out. Our class size policy is a pretty good one. As a person who was a second grade teacher for many, many moons, so I understand elementary school very well. The minimum and the maximum in particularly our elementary school class sizes are pretty good. And if we went above or a higher maximum and collapsed more classes, one, our classrooms probably would be pretty tight for kids. And two, you'd have to add another adult in there for safety reasons. And so that kind of eats up the savings there. And it's just, we want our kids to have small group and one-on-one attention from the teacher. So we want to make sure that's happened. I worked in Brooklyn, New York for 4 years, and my class size was 39 students. So I'm speaking from experience.
And you probably weren't in Williamsburg.
No, I wasn't. So I am speaking from experience as a first grade teacher who had 39 first graders in her classroom and then moved to fourth grade who had 34 fourth graders in a classroom. And while it's doable, it certainly does not make for the best educational space for a child. And I can't see that working with the core values of Montpelier and Roxbury.
Do you see on the state level a readdressing of the model for special needs and perhaps even regionalizing special needs as we regionalize career centers so that we have a lot more trained, it moves kids into well-trained staff and moves away from the instructional assistants locally?
It depends on what you mean by that. I don't believe if you're thinking about a building where students go to in an exclusionary way, that would have probably some lawsuit ramifications because it's not what Vermont has on statute. If you're thinking about it from a training perspective and having staff that could be deployed to schools as needed, that might be something that might be under consideration. But our inclusive nature in general, I don't see that changing. Where
you would have teachers who specialize in hearing impaired students and a group of hearing impaired students there receiving really significant teaching in that particular modality rather than being in the district level. That's an example.
Yeah, and I think it depends on, hearing's a good example because if a child is fully deaf,
right.
Then there's certainly expertise that's needed there. And in several states, they would go to a school for the deaf, and that's certainly a possibility
for part-time, for part of their instruction, and come back to the district so it isn't exclusionary.
Yeah, that's an old model that has largely been debunked as what's best for kids.
Okay, let's cut that out, that discussion.
Yeah.
What can we do to make special needs more cost-effective?
I think the paraeducator piece is a very good one. Paraeducators should be used for when a kid needs help with survival, with toileting and just surviving during the day without, that can't move without an adult, or for safety reasons. For many years in Vermont, not just in Montpelier, Roxbury, but in Vermont, if a child had a literacy difficulty, for instance, a lot of times they would be given instructional assistant support, when really they should be taught by the most expert person in the room. And we've relied on that piece quite a bit here, and we need to not rely on it quite as much and really just focus on the kids who actually need a person next to them to survive the school day successfully. So we have gone a little further than we need to there. That it would be a cost saver. I think that we can do a lot with placement decisions and things like that around how do we make our inclusive classrooms more intentional for the makeup of the class. I think that we have a lot of work to do on our instruction in general in terms of when a kid's not proficient and not showing proficient, we're not waiting for them not to be proficient. We know the science.
Now that goes beyond special needs.
Yeah, we know the science easier,
well beyond.
And we can work and teach, and we have the skilled teachers who can see this developmental level and know what the next step is to move a child forward.
In terms of our budget, getting back to that one, Are there any projected buyouts in this budget and any projected reduction in teaching staff or instructional staff?
We don't have any buyouts in this particular budget because we didn't have any teachers who were there who would have taken advantage of it. So usually we're in close contact with our teachers union about something like buyouts, and if the opportunity arises, then we are interested in it. There simply wasn't an opportunity for this year. That's not to say that it won't be next year, but this year it didn't.
Do we anticipate retirements, replacing all retirements?
No, not in this budget. We have one retirement that we won't be replacing. And in terms of FTE for staff, we eliminated
FTE means?
Full-time equivalent for our staff. So we have one non-licensed administrative position that we are not going to have in our budget this year. It's a custodial supervisor position. So we've eliminated that position from our budget, and that's it.
I'm going to go into the budget itself, and we're not going to talk money. We'll talk on the margin, where it's up or where it's down. Mm-hmm. Non-tax revenues are down 4.3%. What happened?
So that has to do with federal grant money. You were using rollover funds from one year to the next, that kind of from IDEA, which is the special education federal grant money. If you don't use all the money that you're allocated, it rolls over for you. So we are using some rollover money to pay for a position. We use that money up, which is what we want to do, right? It's a good thing that we did that. And so when you use that money up, you have to move that position into the local funds. And so it looks like a decrease in revenue.
The grant freeze, did that sit and impact our district when?
From the federal government?
Yeah, from the federal government.
No, it doesn't. No.
Or is that the state? Is the state a buffer for that?
Yes and no. So
how exposed are we on federal grants?
the federal grants that they're referring to would be a better question for city government than education, because right now the federal grant money that are the primary federal grant money we get are Title I, Title II, and IDEA.
Okay, I'm going to stop you. Title I is?
It's a federal grant allotment for to support students who struggle in school.
Title II?
It's a federal grant for professional learning needs for school districts. And both of those are based on free and reduced lunch population.
Okay, Title IDEA.
It's special education.
So those grants go to us through a Department of Education that might not exist on the federal level.
Yeah, those grants existed prior to the institution of the Department of Education. They were just through a different agency at that point in time. I believe the Department of Education started in the 60s or 70s maybe, and those grants have been around before that. Libby Bonesteel's opinion, nobody else's opinion, but Libby Bonesteel's is that every single state in the union, red, blue, it doesn't matter, relies on that money for their school districts. I would be very hard-pressed to see Republican legislators letting that go, because it's such a significant portion of school district budgets.
Is there a consensus on the state level that you can see that were those allocated as one mass grant, as a block grant, that those no longer were separate pools but came to the states as one, that the state would probably just allocate it as it is right now?
I haven't heard any talk about that,
okay.
That idea.
But people do talk about consolidating, grants into one master grant, saying that the state can better determine its own needs. So our state could probably determine its own needs.
Possibly.
Okay, I'm not going there. Education spending is up 7.74%. What happened?
Healthcare and salaries.
Okay, that's easy. Special education was up 13.37 due to IDEA positions. What new IDEA positions do we have?
That was just what I was referring to, that we used up the rollover funds, and so the position that we were using that rollover funds to pay needed to move into our local budget.
The building and grounds decreased by 12%. What happened? Did they suddenly not age?
No, it has to do with heating costs and cooling costs, and we've done so much work in the last few years because of the federal grant money that came in after COVID that we felt we could decrease our facility needs a little bit.
What happened with PCBs? We tested for them. What were the results of those tests?
We've tested for them at Union and Main Street, and both of them came back with very, very, very low PCB amounts, if any.
Unlike Washington Central.
Right. We have not tested Montpelier High School yet. And so the state is very far behind in their testing schedule. I think I know they bit off more than they could chew here. And so I'm not sure exactly when Montpelier High School now will be tested.
While we're at Montpelier High School, what's going on with flood abatement?
So everything has been moved out of the basement, including our electrical systems. And we basically are doing what we can right now with an empty basement. So essentially it would be a bathtub. The water would come in, the water would go out.
What was in the basement besides electrical and perhaps the power plant?
Yeah, we had, we used the basement for a lot of storage stuff. So we lost a lot of things that we stored in the basement, theater things and athletic equipment and that kind of.
So basically, in terms of capacity, we just need to find storage capacity.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And as you say, the water will go in and the water will come out.
Yeah, it's just as easy as that, I'm sure.
We're replacing windows for the next 3 years at Union and at Main Street. Does that mean that Main Street is in the long-term plans for us?
I think for right now, yeah, it is. It's the windows have been on the docket for a while in our capital plan, and they're not
I think we've been working
cheaper.
on them, you know, at
We
Union
haven't
at
changed
least.
any. No, we haven't changed any yet. We've changed one. Our windows are ginormous and they're old, and so they're very expensive to change out. So we're still considering that, but it's a needed equipment change.
But they're budgeted.
They're in the capital plan.
Right.
Yes.
The $400,000 track fund, have we replaced the track yet?
No, we aren't going to replace the track.
$150,000 was spent out of that fund. What did it go to? I thought it went to the track.
Yeah, it did. So it went to safety things in the track. So for instance, there was a wooden beam that went around that was unsafe for kids. It was a big time trip hazard. So that's been eliminated. We've redone some event spaces. Like, I'm not a track runner, so I'm probably going to get the sport wrong, but shot put and that kind of thing. We've redone areas so that we can hold those types of events at our school building in a safe way. So it's actually, our track facility is actually spread out across our campus now. It's not just in that one area, it's spread. We've put up some safety gear because at the same time track is going on, lacrosse is also going on. And if you've ever touched a lacrosse ball, they're pretty hard and they come at you pretty fast. So we don't want our runners to get hurt that way. So we've put up safety netting so those two sports can go on simultaneously. And those are the kind of things that we're working on right now.
What else in our sports? I should note, this is the 15th anniversary of the Ultimate Frisbee team this year. Congratulations on having perhaps the premier Ultimate Frisbee program. Anything else going on? Any new sports?
We don't have any new sports. Always keep your eyes on our boys basketball team. They're pretty good. And I don't just say that because I was a basketball player.
There's $250,000 remaining technically in that fund of the $400,000. Is it going into windows? What is it going to do? Or is it just
Allocated for the track?
Yeah, for the track.
No, we'll continue to make upgrades to the track and safety renovations for it. And we have a team of people who are working on that who are very knowledgeable about the area. I am not one of those people, but we do have a team of people.
So there is money in reserve just to make sure that track is maintained in a safe manner.
Yeah, safety and accessibility are our big factors there.
The elephant in the room, Washington Central, and talks with Washington Central. What is going on that front?
So actually, the superintendents and board chairs and vice chairs are going to meet next week, actually, to talk about which direction we want to go in. It's an interesting time in education right now, with the state talking about what they want to talk about with consolidation and things like that. So in my perspective, I think we want to do this. We want to do this willingly on our own, and so we're starting the conversation next week.
If you moved kids, now this of course is speculation, all of this is speculation. If you moved kids from Montpelier High School over into U32, there are middle school kids in U32 who would kind of have to be moved to make room for them.
Yes.
Do you anticipate building in a floodplain on Montpelier High School?
I think
people have discussed that.
Oh yeah, that's been discussed. I think those are all questions that we have to come to at some point. You're right in that you can't just move Montpelier High School students to U32. They won't fit without moving the 7th and 8th graders out of U32. And the 7th and 8th graders won't fit at Main Street Middle School.
We've discussed that earlier.
So there would be some changes. We would most likely use Montpelier High School in some kind of configuration.
Given the staggering, first of all, they would move into U32 with additions to U32, to modifications to U32 to accommodate, and modifications to the high school. Do you anticipate the state stepping forward if they're proposing this with construction assistance?
This is one of the things that the superintendents are pushing the state on, that if you're working towards consolidation of districts in any way, then you have to also include state aid for construction because of this very thing. There's also scenarios across the state where two small schools could merge into one building, but they need renovations in order to make it happen. And so that's happening all over the state right now, and it's something we're really pushing on as the state moves forward with consolidation concerns.
There's more to the state plan than simply consolidation. What else is in there? What else are they talking about?
So the governor's plan stands on basically three pillars. It's education finance, how we fund our schools.
Which I'm not going to get into because it's incredibly complicated.
It is very complex. How we deliver education, which would be more around consolidation, and how we govern education, which is more with schools.
The 5 school districts. What would happen on town meeting day? Would we be able to elect people to those regional school boards?
I don't know. Those are details that have not been shared with me.
Where in the process is the 5 school district part? It's a concept right now.
It is a concept. It's an idea. There are other ideas that are being thrown out as well that have just as equal, if not more, merit to them. There's no research behind the idea of 5 districts. It's simply based on a meeting structure of superintendents, which have no real rhyme or reason other than location. So the research will tell us that the optimal size school district is anywhere between 2,000 and 4,000 students. The Vermont Superintendents Association and the Vermont School Boards Association are saying that's what we should go for. If we're going to go for something, let's go with what research tells us. So those are other ideas. 2,000
students would be the Washington Central Montpelier Stowe district, wouldn't it?
It would be just Wash Central and Montpelier.
Okay.
Stowe wouldn't be a part of that conversation.
If you went further, slightly further, then Stowe would be a part of that conversation.
No, I doubt it. There's other school districts that are closer to us than Stowe.
But not bigger.
Yeah, no, I think Barry is bigger than Stowe is.
Is it? Okay. How could I forget Barry?
Yeah.
My apologies. What else is in that plan besides the 5 school districts? Is there anything on more testing? Is there anything on outcomes, on trying to adjust to more an outcome-based change system? To try and address outcomes?
Agency of Education will say student outcomes quite a bit. That those words come out of their mouths quite a bit. They haven't given any evidence or rationale or ideas as to how they would increase student outcomes other than changing the funding formula and the governance model and offering more school choice. So I'm not...
School choice being what?
Under the agency's plan or the state plan right now, my understanding is that they would like school choice for any child through a lottery system.
does that mean that a child in Montpelier, if their parents will schlep them, would be able to go to Stowe or anything else in that district?
Within their district, yeah, according to the agency's plan.
Weren't they also speaking of charter schools and private schools?
Yes.
Where would private schools fit in? Because there's so few kids in Vermont.
So one of the challenges in Vermont education in some school districts, this is not a challenge for Montpelier Roxbury, but one of the challenges is the designated high school. So students in Montpelier Roxbury, for instance, their designated high school is Montpelier High School. They don't have choice. That is the place we go to. In other districts, they don't have a school building. So in White River Valley, for instance, there's no school building in some of those towns, and so they have choice for high school.
Or we're talking about Roxbury before it merged.
Yeah. Right. And so one of the pieces of what the legislature is contending with is how do we designate schools, and how do we make that fair? How does it work with Supreme Court law that's already been established? You'll hear the Brigham.
Vermont's Supreme Court.
Yeah, you'll
law.
hear the Brigham decision
Right.
quite a bit. You'll hear a Maine Supreme Court decision called Carson v. Macon quite a bit. And all of this has to do with choice and school choice. And
Is anyone talking about funding religious schools?
so right now with Carson v. Macon, that's the law that addresses that piece. The Supreme Court in Maine has decided that we could not discriminate against religious school for public dollars. So yes, there is money that goes to religious schools currently.
One final one. Equity.
Mm-hmm.
We're very concerned about equity in the district. Do you anticipate that clashing with the current administration and school funding through the Department of Education? I believe the other day that Linda McMahon, who had that, was asked that question: if schools have clubs for equity, would federal funds be withdrawn? And she refused to answer that.
I can imagine she did.
Do you see a possible fight over the board's direction on diversity, equity, and inclusion?
What I can say, I wouldn't anticipate what the federal government is going to do right now. What I can say is that there is a core value in Montpelier Roxbury that every single child who walks through our doors has a place in our schools, and that they belong, and that they are celebrated for who they are. And that's not going to change. It doesn't matter what the federal government does. And so it's our job to ensure that students and all of their wonderful identities that they bring with them are celebrated, are acknowledged, and are part of our school ecosystem. That's never going to change for me. It's never going to change for our school board, I don't believe. I don't want to speak for them, but I can almost promise you it's not going to change for them either. And so with that kind of idea, whatever we need to do in order to establish safe places for our kids, we're going to do.
And equity of all family types.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there are there are core values in this district that might differ. But they are different. They are core values that you perceive our community to have.
Yes. Yeah. They're core values that our school buildings have for our kids. We want kids to love being at school and to know that they are loved when they're there. And that's the bottom line for me. So I won't do anything to jeopardize that feeling for our kids and our staff in our school buildings.
In terms of inclusion, you've taken moves to sit and make the board listen to the community better and communicate with the community better. Could you discuss those moves that reach out beyond the school board meeting to try and feel the community outside those who are sitting there?
I think that's a board goal, not a Libby Bonesteel goal. But the board has
Well, the board's not sitting here right now.
No, they're not. They're not. Our board is a fantastic group of people, and they really do care and want to hear from the community around what affects them. And so we've taken to using Front Porch Forum quite a bit more in the last couple of years than we have in the past. And that's been very successful. So we have a board Front Porch Forum page, which is through the voice of Jim Murphy, who's our board chair, and we have a superintendent Front Porch Forum page so that we can respond to the community and put out more information. One of the challenges that a school district has is that I have easy access to the people who have kids in our school district. I have their emails. I can send out information pretty easily. But I don't have that for the larger community. And so we've found that Front Porch Forum really is a vehicle to get our voices out to the larger community and allow them to ask questions and allow us to respond in a very public way.
And all of your board meetings are on Orca television.
They are. We love our Orca colleagues, yes.
At the same time, I believe that you hold meetings in Roxbury periodically, that the board does meet in both cities.
Yeah, that's happened since the beginning of the merger, so every fourth meeting is out in Roxbury.
Do you do anything else? Front Porch Forum does not reach Roxbury. How else do we get the message out?
Well, Roxbury has their own Front Porch Forum page.
Oh, do they? Okay, so you're on both pages.
Yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't know. I apologize to Roxbury.
We have other means of communication. Vic Guadagno, I'm going to mess up his last name, but Guadagno, who's the president of our MRPS caregiver organization, and I did a fireside chat series around the budget where we were literally sitting in his living room with video cameras on us talking about the budget, and that's coming out through social media, and we'll push it out in other means. We're doing a lot of flyers right now. When I was leaving, my assistant was printing up color flyers to make sure it goes around the community for our budget, for instance. We've done a district newsletter that we're trying to get out there a little bit more this year. So we learned some lessons last year around the budget process, and we didn't want false narratives to repeat themselves ever again, quite honestly. And the more that we can get our voices out there and answer questions right away in the moment is better for us. So we want people coming to us with those questions and knowing who we are so that we can answer them. The other thing I do a monthly coffee chat, both in Roxbury and at Capitol Grounds. Every third Friday at Capitol Grounds, I'm there at Capitol Grounds just literally having coffee, and anybody's welcome to come talk and ask any question they want about the school district. So we're trying to do those kind of things that are a little bit more organic.
Now, I hate to sit and say when my kid was in school, but I imagine you still have parents groups at all three schools, parent support groups, and you still have tons of parents coming into the schools helping?
We do. I don't know if I'd say tons, but we have parents coming in who do. We have a great popcorn program through our parent groups that the kids love and the teachers love, quite honestly. That's at Main Street Middle School and Montpelier High School. Led by Emma Bay Hansen mainly, who used to be on our school board. And we have parents who come in for volunteerism at Union Elementary School for the ECO program and everything like that. So there is some, yes.
And you also have Matt McLean's program, if you discuss that.
Matt McLean's program is phenomenal, and I don't know when this will air, but the next school board meeting on Wednesday is highlighting Matt's work.
And what's the name of the program?
It's community-based learning or flexible pathways. And I am just so proud of what Matt and his team have developed for students. The opportunities kids have in our very small high school is just marvelous. So highly recommend tuning into that presentation. You'll hear kids talk about their experiences. You'll hear Matt look at the demographics data of who takes advantage of it and how we can get better at that. But Matt McLean's just done a marvelous job with that, and his team, of course.
Libby, we have gone around and around and talked more about the schools than I thought we would. This has been a great experience. Thank you for being here. And I would encourage everyone to get out there on town meeting day or vote before town meeting day, but weigh in on this and tell your neighbors too as well. It's a good election. Watch all of these shows. They're all interesting in their own way. And thank you for watching this one.